Where it's VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. You're watching The Headspace, spelled with a 3, because you know, it's the holy trinity of South African hip-hop journalism and the most poignant African hip-hop podcast. You better tell somebody, you better ask somebody if you don't know. If you're here for the first time, what we do is we profile, we talk about, we engage on the phenomenon that is hip-hop as it manifests itself in this beautiful continent, what we've done with it, what we could possibly do with it. And you're watching the review segment. Today, I am reviewing a project from an artist who comes from a movement which is also quite a phenomenon in and of itself, centered around the Mthatha and the surrounding areas. If you're familiar with the Eastern Cape, they go by the name of Do Things Entertainment, DTE, being led like cats like Android Dinsky. Is it Tonic Suave or Tony Swave? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Suave.
Shout out to Tonic. We see the moves, Zigga the Main, and so forth and so forth and so forth. But this is basically another establishment of this expanding quote-unquote Xhosa trap wave, which seems to be reconfiguring itself in interestingly new ways in different parts of South Africa where Xhosa people inhabit. Now, this particular MC is somebody who caught my attention on the first listen. I remember Dakeza playing a joint, and right on the mark, I was immediately impressed by clarity and cadence. Now, a lot of MCs tend to be so influenced by the obvious Americanizing of the slang that their words tend to fall under the tongue in ways that don't enunciate really clearly. So much so it becomes a very difficult experience if you're actually trying to listen to the artist and not just kind of allow yourself to be taken solely by the vibes. So what really impressed me when I first listened to Dyna Steez was the fact that she was just so centered, and you could tell that all these powerful rhymes were coming from a relatively little body with so much energy, and it's fighting for its voice to be heard in ways that are succinctly present on the mic, and the wit and the energy that it delivers is absolutely captivating. For me, those are some of the makings of a potentially legendary MC. Now enter the Nomdyna EP. Dog, I just love that title. I just want to say it reminds me of the structural Xhosa names that we used to hear from old school women growing up, Nombani, and how at some point somebody would actually get named Nomdondon by whatever Tumengayo. So let's say you love your rap, so I love the fact that she takes aspects of her own indigenous past and takes the memetics, the language, the coding, the actual references of where she comes from, and brings it to the foreground in ways that are absolutely effortless and natural, because she's not trying to come across as some kind of Xhosa revivalist MC. She's just speaking for what she is. Now, this project, very brief EP, opens up with Ula, which is kind of like praise poetry meets the dim, dark world of trap. She goes into it with such dexterity and flair that is super impressive. Now, I don't think people thoroughly understand how difficult it is to trap your way around Xhosa as a language. You see, Xhosa has so many guttural sounds and clicks that it can be quite difficult to aesthetically move around in ways that are fluid. And a lot of this music, sonically speaking, is very resistant to harsh sounds. So the fact that you could carry across a whole joint going and still make those sounds sit on the bedrock of those 808s in ways that don't disturb the friction is an impeccable skill. And that's why Xhosa trap as a phenomenon is interesting, because here you have young people who are taking this southern phenomenon and its cadences, and they're melding it with their own unique dialectic sounds. It's like, my goodness, it is a artistic recipe that's organically flowing and becoming something powerful in its own right. And I think Nomdyna is one of these examples of how when you channel who you are, because you could tell this is a rural girl with city instincts and 2000 mentality and futuristic sensibilities and pop culture leanings. So what it all does is that it says, I aspire to fall neatly into trend, but I want to do it in a way that's going to navigate my story as a young Xhosa woman. And she does that absolutely perfecto. Like, I feel like the tradition of women Xhosa MCs who are navigating the story of new femininities in the South African context, who are showing that rap shouldn't and really isn't gendered, that an MC is an MC is an MC. We're talking about people of the ilk of the Holy Alphas, the MCs that are really making noise in different parts of South Africa right now, showing us that the narrative is what matters, and the authenticity of the MC, when it's tapped into, is what will allow everything to zone out in a way that the audience is able to relate with whoever you are as a person. Talking about rappers like K-Kid, we're talking about all of these different MCs that are coming, and they're showing us that we really don't need useless configurations like female MC, because when it comes down to the art form and the craft of this rap, it is what it is, and there is no disadvantage or advantage whether you're male or female. The projection of your voice, the coming together of your story is all that matters in how you understand your skill. Now, from Kula, it goes right into Obsession, which I think as a joint kind of falls a little bit too comfortably into the tropes of trap, to a point where it lacks melody. It's the typical monotonous trap, and what it does is that it traps Dyna Steez in this place where she kinda just sounds like everything that's out there. And I think it is her sharp narratives and her ability to be able to weave together interesting punchlines which make this narrative of what does a woman have to do to truly succeed in this male-dominated world, which is really the layer of what the track attempts to navigate around. Do you become simply a leech to the masculine constructs, or do you use those constructs to kind of veil your femininity in ways that allow you to kind of work the system? This is the conundrum, the conflict of womanhood as it presents itself in a hyper-masculine world. And that's the most interesting thing to listen to here, although I don't think everybody's really gonna catch that immediately unless they're trying to get that. And I was listening to this project trying to understand so much more than how she's doing things, but why is she doing things in a particular kind of way. And it catches my attention a little bit more pleasantly with joints like Mula, where obviously it's about getting the money, but here the production carries more weight. Her voice moves in this way that's overly saturated but kind of sounds nice, and as a result, even though the parts where she raps in English distance her natural flair, because you can tell that she's not as proficient in her effortlessness as she is in Xhosa, it still doesn't drown her creativity as a whole. So I think she is the kind of artist who can multilingually bounce on songs. She just needs to work in how to create a consistent enunciation as she switches from language to language, because the devices are not the same. Therefore, rapping in English uses your mouth and your tongue and the insides of your oral space in different ways than rapping in isiXhosa. And sometimes the switch can create an inaudibility that kind of makes the artist a little bit glitchy to listen to. And I think the only thing about Mula which makes it kind of move in a way that's stagnant is that, other than that, it's an example of how even in the typical trope of trap, when it's done right and somebody like Dyna Steez steps into the fore, somebody that understands themselves, it's a winning recipe. Now, flowing into Ikesi, Ixesha, these are songs which really capture this rapper side of Dyna Steez. The fact that she can actually carry multi-syllables, complex cadences, and rap circles around your favorite MC ngesiXhosa, talking about things that are so fundamentally tied to isiXhosa language, metaphors and similes that are associated with who she is as a person. This is what is so impressive about listening to Dyna Steez. She is kind of an accidental language revivalist. What she happens to do is she finds interesting ways of carrying across modern day narratives and gets paused. And now it closes off in a way that is really interesting, because the screeching auto-tune on the last joint might have sounded a little bit off had it not been for her energy, and how she brings that in the fore on Ixesha is really telling. And I want to really sum it up with something she says, quote unquote, bringing the kasi, bringing the city, bringing the lali. And she talks about how she's doing all of this and her heart is literally in the heavens. This shows the aspirational quality of her project. It says, I am here to take over, I am here to dominate the game. And I think ultimately it's a really good effort from an artist who is young and has room to grow. And if this is the beginning, I really think that the DTE unit have something special as a force, but also individually. Nomdyna is an amazing EP which I feel will reflect on as the birth pains of the eventual greatness of Dyna Steez, if she really heightens on her most fundamental qualities, which is the animated persona, the ability to be able to just make isiXhosa slide so easily in the trap-centered beats, and ultimately the authenticity, the voice, the natural narrative, and telling it in a way where you're not trying to borrow American tropes just to fit into what everybody else is saying, but you just are who you are, and that you feel like that's good enough, cool enough, and dope enough to carry. Ultimately, what am I giving this? I'm gonna give it a 5, because what it really is at this point is a midpoint project that captures that this is Dyna Steez's springboard effort. This is her taking what she's been doing around the mixtape circuit with joints that she's been recording and trying to create a body of work, which isn't easy, because with a body of work there's narrative, there's a beginning that leads to a consequential model of what you're trying to say. So ultimately you've got to have something interesting to relay to your audience, and I think she's at that age where the stories aren't filled with enough depth to carry her beyond this moment. And I mean, who does at that age? She's really in a time in her life where she has all the right to learn how to be an MC in front of us, because she's got all the potential we know is going to take her to this place if she channels this indubitably amazing skill that she clearly has. So for me, pretty average, but average in a way that you appreciate, because it's coming from an artist who really is, technically speaking, starting out and kind of moving, showing her place as a rookie, but as a pretty impressive rookie that I think even some of the vets might have a little bit of heat under their collar, because she's shown through various tracks that she could body a whole lot of your favorites. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient Mada. If you got any other projects you want us to review, please holla at us. And remember, rap is rap is rap. There's no gender involved. Don't need to have a female MC, because there's no need to have a male MC. If you were sick right now and you were in your deathbed and 2 doctors walked right in front of you, one a man, one a woman, you wouldn't call one a doctor and the other a female doctor now, wouldn't you? They're both doctors, and what their skill shows has nothing to do on the bearings of their body or whatever it is. So that's what it is with rap. That's all I want to say. Just as a side note to a pretty impressive project by a pretty impressive artist. Please subscribe if you haven't. This is the kind of content we keep dropping. Shout out.